Picture this. You walk into a jewelry store, pick out a beautiful diamond ring, and hand over a couple of months' salary for it. They tell you it's an incredibly rare stone, the best investment, and the perfect symbol of love. But if you try to sell that ring back tomorrow, or take it to a pawn shop, you'll be surprised to find that they'll offer you, at best, a third of what you paid. We've been brainwashed since childhood that diamonds are extremely rare and incredibly valuable. But the truth is that a global market with multi-billion-dollar turnovers was built on an artificial illusion and brilliant manipulation. Diamonds have no critical practical value for survival, yet people willingly give up the equivalent of several months' salary for them. Today, you're going to learn how one corporation convinced the whole world to buy ordinary carbon for the price of gold, how they broke the thousand-year-old traditions of entire countries just to make a sale, and why this perfect monopoly is rapidly collapsing right now. At the end, I'll tell you how the technological progress of recent years forced this cartel to capitulate. Let's start with the biggest myth that props up the price of these stones: the myth of rarity. It seems to us that diamonds are mined bit by bit, but the fundamental truth is that crystallized carbon is a very common mineral when compared to most other precious stones. It's estimated that at least 133 million carats of gem-quality diamonds are sold every year. Total global production of rough diamonds in 2022 was about 120 million carats. With such an industrial scale, talking about a shortage is just pointless. The main barrier to buying one is only the artificially inflated price, not a physical lack of them in nature. Let's just compare the stats. Emeralds are roughly 200 times rarer than diamonds. Rubies are estimated to be 300 times rarer. Sapphires are found about 100 times less often than diamonds. Truly high-quality rubies of a benchmark color that haven't undergone artificial heat treatment are a genuine geological anomaly. Over 90% of rubies sold at elite auctions for more than $50,000 a carat are mined in one single historical region in Myanmar. And for every 150,000 diamond crystals found, there is only one crystal of red beryl. Despite this, the share of diamonds in the entire volume of the global gemstone market makes up a staggering 84.8% by revenue. But maybe a diamond costs that much because of its unique optical brilliance? That's also a misconception sold to us by advertising. A stone's brilliance is determined by its refractive index. For a diamond, it equals 2.41. But for the natural mineral rutile, this figure reaches 2.90. In nature, there are at least 8 minerals with a higher refractive index than a diamond. As for fire, the ability to separate light into the colors of the rainbow, a diamond's dispersion rate is 0.044, while rutile's is 0.280, meaning it's visually several times more saturated. Even synthetic alternatives beat diamonds. Strontium titanate has a dispersion of 0.13, which is 3 times higher. So how did a very ordinary, not so rare, and not the shiniest stone come to cost such crazy money? It's all about unprecedented control. Coming up, I'll show you how a system was built that forced the whole world to play by the same rules. To understand how the price is formed, we need to go back to the late 19th century. In 1867, colossal diamond deposits were discovered in South Africa. This triggered a massive diamond rush. Before that, diamonds were mined in India and Brazil in very meager quantities, and it was exactly this scarcity that made them a commodity for the aristocracy. But the sudden influx of millions of South African stones created an existential threat. Supply began to exceed demand, threatening to crash prices down to the level of semi-precious stones. At that moment, a British entrepreneur named Cecil Rhodes showed up, started buying out small concessions, and in 1888 founded the De Beers Company. The company's management, and later the Oppenheimer dynasty, which controlled it for about 80 years, understood a simple thing: diamonds don't spoil like food, and they aren't consumed like coal. If you constantly increase production, the market will become oversaturated. The only way to save the industry was to create an absolute monopoly to artificially restrict supply. To do this, the Central Selling Organization was created. At the peak of its power, De Beers controlled 80 to 90% of the global rough diamond supply. The cartel operated on three strict principles. First, a total buyout of raw materials from independent producers all over the world. If anyone refused, De Beers could dump reserves from their vaults onto the market, temporarily crash prices, and bankrupt the competitor. Second, strategic inventory management. During periods of weak demand, the company hid massive volumes of rough diamonds in underground vaults, keeping prices high. Third, the sightholder system. De Beers sold rough diamonds only to a limited group of buyers, whose number rarely exceeded 200 companies worldwide. They would come to trading sessions where they were completely stripped of the right to negotiate. They were handed a pre-assembled box of diamonds at a fixed price. The buyer could only agree or refuse. Refusal meant permanent expulsion from this elite club, which was equivalent to the end of their business. This system created an unprecedented illusion of scarcity. Diamonds were abundant, but their availability was strictly metered out. But there was one catch. You can control the supply, but you can't force people to buy what they don't need. In the late 1930s, during the Great Depression, the demand for luxury goods collapsed. The younger generation saw no point in spending money on clear stones. Before the 1930s, diamond rings were actually rarely used as an engagement symbol. Rubies and sapphires were considered far more desirable. A diamond wasn't a cultural rule. In 1940, only about 10% of American brides received diamond rings. Realizing that the cartel could collapse due to a lack of demand, De Beers hired an advertising agency. The agency made a brilliant decision. They needed to sell not the properties of the stone, but social constructs, the idea of eternity, status, and proof of love. They launched a stealth campaign in pop culture, organizing lectures in schools, giving diamonds to Hollywood stars for red carpets, and sponsoring articles that linked the size of the stone to the strength of a man's feelings. And in 1947, copywriter Francis Garrity came up with a phrase that changed everything. A diamond is forever. In the year 2000, this slogan was recognized as the best advertising slogan of the entire 20th century. The stone became a symbol of indestructible love, and this gently implanted the idea that the price of the product doesn't matter when you're buying eternity. By 1990, 80% of brides were already receiving these rings. Then, marketers introduced a financial imperative. First came the rule that a ring should cost 1 month's salary. This guaranteed that the corporation's profits would grow along with the population's income. Later, in the 1980s, they aggressively raised the stakes to the 2-month salary rule. Men were directly told how much their devotion was worth in cash, and in some regions of Europe and Japan, they even tested a 3-month salary rule. Perhaps the most striking example of this cultural engineering was Japan. Until 1959, importing diamonds there was restricted, and the Japanese marriage tradition didn't involve romantic courtship with giving rings at all. The ritual was sealed by sharing rice wine from a wooden bowl. In 1967, only 5% of Japanese brides received diamonds. De Beers ran ads in Japanese magazines featuring modern women doing atypical things: yachting, mountain climbing, camping. A diamond was positioned as a symbol of joining the Western world and breaking with the conservative past. In just 14 years, the share of Japanese brides with diamond rings skyrocketed from 5% to 60%. A 1,000-year-old tradition was practically erased by marketing. But every monopoly has a weak spot. Very soon, this perfectly built mechanism ran into forces it couldn't control. Stick around until the end. You'll find out how a secret pact with the Soviet Union and modern labs destroyed the diamond empire. The perfect D. Beer's monopoly wouldn't have survived if people started reselling their diamonds en masse. Every resold stone would compete with new raw materials, crashing prices. The solution to the problem was elegant. The slogan, "A diamond is forever," placed a moral taboo on resale. The idea was planted in the public mind. Selling a ring is a desecration of feelings and a rejection of family values. This froze millions of carats in jewelry boxes at home. From a financial perspective, buying a diamond in a retail store is a classic example of sunk costs, not an investment. The difference between the retail price and its real value on the secondary market is catastrophic. Why? First, retail markups. The consumer pays for the costs of mining, logistics, and the colossal markup of the jewelry retailer, which can be 100%, 200%, or even more. Second, information asymmetry. The buyer can't professionally evaluate the stone and blindly relies on the brand, which inflates the price. When you try to sell a ring to a jeweler, they'll offer a price lower than even the original wholesale cost of the stone. It's not profitable for them to buy a stone off the street when they can get new rough diamonds with a guarantee from suppliers. The setting is appraised simply by the scrap weight of the precious metals. In the end, the consumer gets back, at best, 30% to 60% of the price paid, and often much less. The only exceptions are historical antique stones or colored diamonds, which are truly rare. For the absolute majority of the market, buying a diamond is a highly unprofitable emotional expense. And here's where the most interesting part begins. The absolute control of the cartel cracked in the middle of the last century thanks to the Soviet Union. In 1954 and 1955, Soviet geologists discovered colossal diamond deposits in harsh Yakutia. The prospect of the Soviet Union dumping millions of carats of diamonds onto the free market to get foreign currency sent the De Beers management into a panic. This would have crashed global prices and buried the myth of rarity. As a result of highly complex maneuvers in the late 1950s, an unprecedented secret agreement was reached. The Soviet Union agreed to sell the bulk of its export production exclusively through De Beers channels. It was colossal geopolitical hypocrisy. Officially, the Soviet Union was fighting capitalism and the apartheid regime in South Africa. But in reality, the cartel was transferring huge hard currency revenues to its ideological enemy every year, right in the middle of the Cold War. Economic pragmatism won. The country got stable money, and De Beers maintained the illusion of a shortage. But the monopoly didn't hold. In February 2006, the European Commission ruled that the exclusive agreements between De Beers and Russia's Alrosa violated antitrust laws and ordered them to completely stop buying from each other. De Beers' share of the global market plummeted from a historic 90% to roughly 30 to 40%. And then came a real technological nightmare. Lab-grown diamonds appeared. Created using advanced methods, they are physically, chemically, and optically absolutely identical to natural stones. Technology allowed for the production of premium quality stones at a small fraction of the cost of open-pit mining. Sensing the threat, in 2018, De Beers made a cunning move. They launched their own brand of lab-grown diamonds, selling them at a dumping price, just $800 a carat. The idea was to discredit the technology, convincing buyers that a lab-grown stone is just cheap, everyday costume jewelry that doesn't even deserve a quality certificate. But the free market reacted differently. Price transparency showed people the real value of a perfect carbon crystal. Buyers started asking themselves, why overpay if the result looks exactly the same? Competition crashed wholesale prices for lab-grown stones by 90% in just a few years. In 2024, De Beers lowered the price to $500 a carat. The segregation strategy failed. In the first half of 2025, the CEO officially announced the complete shutdown of their lab-grown diamond jewelry business. This marked the former cartel's capitulation to the laws of the free tech market. Today, the balance of power has completely changed. The most striking example was the Republic of Botswana, home to the richest deposits in the world. After tough negotiations, a new contract was signed in February 2025. While the Botswanan State Company previously received only 25% of the diamonds for independent sale, that share is now increasing to 30%, and by 2035, it will reach an impressive 50%. This strips De Beers of direct monopoly control over half of the most valuable stones. The corporation's legal and physical monopoly is completely destroyed. The history of the diamond cartel will remain the greatest example of the triumph of aggressive marketing over physical reality. Taking one of the most common minerals as a foundation, the company convinced the world of its incredible exclusivity through supply control, psychological programming with the slogan "A diamond is forever," and blocking the secondary market. The paradox is that the illusion created in 1947 turned out to be so deeply rooted in our cultural code that even knowing the truth about its zero investment value, millions of people continue to obediently hand over their multi-month salaries for crystallized carbon. And now, answer honestly. Knowing that natural and lab-grown diamonds are absolutely identical, physically and optically, would you overpay huge money for a stone mined from the earth just for status? Share your thoughts in the comments. Let's see how well 20th century marketing is still working. 90% of people confidently claim that advertising doesn't affect them, yet they keep buying diamonds, following rules written by marketers 80 years ago. Are you sure you're not one of them? Subscribe to the channel to level up your critical thinking and stop overpaying for beautiful myths.